Welcome to Making Money with Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. With over 20 years of real estate experience and selling over 150 homes a year, Laura Sanders is the #1 RE/MAX agent in the state of Florida for 2021. Join us each week as we discuss how to make money through buying and flipping homes to renting versus selling and everything in between. To join the conversation, call in live 888-994-4995, Studio A.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Making Money with Laura Sanders, and I am your host, Laura Sanders. Today, we're doing it from the Laura Sanders office, where you can see lots of paperwork, lots of things going on. Today, we're going to talk about fraud, wire fraud, how to make sure to not lose your money. So with me today is attorney Nicholas Fiorello. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you for having me.
I forgot my line I normally say. Every week we talk about something to help you make a little money, save a little money, or maybe just help you navigate this crazy world that we live in, because boy, oh boy, is it crazy. And it is. It really is. I had somebody spit on me the other day because they were schizophrenic. I had a case of Diet Coke explode in the back of my car the other day. It's a little hot out there.
Very hot. Very hot.
Yeah.
So
tell us what you know about what's going on right now with wire fraud. I know that JK Closing Attorneys just implemented a new system in order to try to help avoid this. So, talk about, you're saying you're getting bulletins every day. We're in the new era of wire fraud. I know that it makes me feel a little bit better that now I see on my checks there's like a watermark on it, so they can't really copy your checks anymore. But I would guess that some people still have checks that aren't watermarked, so somebody tries to copy my check. Believe it or not, think about it.
A unique status. Yeah, it's definitely a unique area of, where we are at in the world right now. Definitely Florida as a whole and real estate in general are fraud hotspots. Some would even say Florida is the fraud capital of the world right now. It's an ideal place. There's a lot of elderly people that are easily taken advantage of through various different things. And, it's just a massive target for fraudsters to come in, and especially in the real estate world of Florida. You have a lot of different avenues where fraud can happen. And what we see a lot of is, wire fraud, like you were saying. We have upgraded our system to kind of counter some of the issues that might arise due to AI, due to the increase of fraud, due to several different reasons that things are being impacted in the real estate market. One being AI, like I touched on. AI is being used to make fraudulent identification, to make fraudulent bank statements that are issued to closing agents. There are fraudulent sales documents that have been created, and to show that a seller owns a property that they really do not. And talking about bank statements, buyers sometimes show that they have money, so proof of funds, that is not necessarily meaningful because it's all made up, and AI has made it look like it is a actual document from a bank or from something that shows there are funds in an account. So like you said, we upgraded our system for wires. We have insurance on all of our wires now, which is great. So we're protected on sending money, but we also go through secure through a secure portal. We're asking that people come and verify with our office before we don't have the full account number on our wire instructions for a reason. That's so people call and verify the wire instructions. A lot of times that what
You
we're
have to be
seeing is
very specific. You have to be very specific with the people, and the realtors need to tell them, hey, you're going to need to call to make sure that you're sending it. And you wouldn't want to call the number that's on the email because it could be fake.
100%. And that was one thing
So,
I was just on. A lot of
yeah.
these fraud schemes are different types of fraud schemes. One, there's email forwarding. Email forwarding is one where somehow they get into your email and they have an automatic function where they forward your email to themselves without you noticing. And eventually they'll just sit there and play the waiting game. They'll wait. And then as soon as it's ready for closing, they'll come in with a fake email pretending to be somebody with the transaction, stating, here are the wire instructions, hoping that somebody will send them the money instead. We counter that in our office because we have banned all email forwarding from our email. So there's no email forwarding allowed from our emails. So that can't happen with our corporate emails. So we have taken, the step in that direction to counter it that way. Sometimes you as an agent too, and going back to the point of this whole thing, using a highly skilled realtor and a closing agent offers you not just the chance at a smooth transaction, which we all seek, but it offers you a legal and financial shield along the process. Because if you're associating yourself with people that are equipped to fight this from the onset of a transaction, then it makes it so much easier and so much safer throughout the entire transaction. So what I was about to say is that there are some instances and cases where buyers and sellers will communicate with a realtor or communicate with a closing agent or a lender or anybody involved in a transaction simply to study how the communication goes from that firm or office or company or team. And they study it. And then, they end up stealing your company or your team's information and then spoof your wire instructions later. So it's just something that now with AI and with technology where it's at, and you know, with the current status of the world and people, I don't know if they're desperate, they make fun of it, or it's a game to them, or it's just their business. They steal identities and they steal money, and they're becoming more and more clever and coming up with different ingenious ways to do it. And sometimes they are successful because people aren't taking the right steps, aren't taking the right actions, aren't taking the right protective measures, and aren't associating with the right people who are doing their due diligence to ensure it doesn't happen.
Right. This also segues into property fraud.
100%.
Uh,
And a big thing is vacant land is a huge thing. And what
I
people
don't know why
do
anybody
is
want it.
because they
I
can make
mean,
money seller. They act as the
it,
seller and fake
yeah,
that they're the seller to get whatever the property is worth. It could be $8,000, it could be $10,000, it could be $100,000.
it's small.
But that
It's
eight
small, and
thousand
by the time they realize, yeah. Well,
exactly.
so here's one of the biggest scams right now out there. Somebody will reach out to you via email telling you that they want to sell a property, and you'll want to get on the phone with them, and they'll tell you, oh, I just had larynx surgery, I can't speak, and I want to go ahead and do this transaction. Now, there was a property that somebody tried to do that with me too, and I was like, yeah, I wasn't feeling too good about it, I felt like there was something going on. So then fast forward, it ends up getting listed and then taken off the market. So I called the realtor and said to the realtor, hey, I see that you had this property list, but you took it off. I'm just curious what happened because this person reached out to me. And she was like, oh, it was fraud.
We
So you
had
have to be,
somebody who 100% be vigilant. We had somebody submit an offer to our office that was executed, and we were supposed to be representing the seller. We caught it initially because we asked several questions. Initially, you've seen them. You know, one of our first questions to the
Have you
realtor
ever
when
met
they
in person with them? Right?
exactly that's number one.
They asked the
So if
realtor
they
that. No, that's a realtor question you guys ask. You ask us when we
yes,
send a file over, have you met with the seller in person? Or do you personally know this person to
exactly,
know?
and
So,
that's the first.
so
That's just the first step.
yeah. Well, we'll go to commercial break, and when we come back, we'll tell people how you can protect your property and what can happen and keep you from letting this happen to you, because it just takes a few minutes to do the protection. So we're going to go to commercial break and stay tuned. We'll be right back.
At JK Closing Attorneys, we do all of the same things that a title company does, but with the benefits of being a law office. We can help with residential real estate, short sales, commercial real estate, refinances, 1031 exchanges, and FRIPTA withholding.
Contact JK Closing Attorneys today at 954-332-3111. Again, that is 954-332-3111.
Priority One Credit Union of Florida is a welcoming credit union that makes your financial success our number one priority. We offer lower loan rates, higher deposit rates, and common sense local loan approvals, with nationwide access through shared branching.
Hi, I'm Dina Hennessy, President and CEO at Priority One Credit Union. We are open to the community. Anyone can be a member of our credit union, and we would love to have you.
Contact us today at 954-335-5100. You can also reach us at PriorityOneFL.org. Your financial success is our priority. That's 954-335-5100.
You have been watching Making Money with Laura. For more information, contact Laura Sanders at 954-650-0827 or visit her website at theloracell.com. And now back to the show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Making Money with Laura Sanders, and I am your host, Laura Sanders. So this week, we're talking how to protect yourself when it comes to fraud, and I'm here today with Nick Fiorello, JK Closing Attorney. Nick is great. He is so personable. He's always available, even when he's having he wasn't personally having the baby, but, listen, you know how us wives can be when we're having a baby. We want their undivided attention. So he has been very helpful in helping us to navigate this crazy world and the things that go on. Unfortunately, fraud is a very real thing. It's happening daily. I know as a big title company, you guys have offices in Orlando, you have offices in Miami, you have offices in Palm Beach, Broward County. And I know as such a huge company, you're seeing fraud happen on a daily basis that you're having to intervene. Let's talk about some of the defenses that we can use for property fraud, insurance fraud, wire fraud, all that fun stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about some recommendations that you'd like to make to our audience?
Well, definitely. If you're in Broward County, I'm speaking about Broward because we're in Broward right now. They have something called Broward County Owners Alert, and that's something that is free to register for. And you register it on the property appraiser site, and it basically lets you know instantly if there's a document filed that changes your ownership in the property. So that's number one. Definitely sign up for anything like that in your corresponding county to help to protect and be alerted to any changes in your title. That's number one. Number two, you want to associate yourself with professionals that are ready to handle certain fraudulent items, claims, any kind of hurdle that might be brought upon you in the real estate world. You don't want to go to somebody who is simply going to just be a yes man or a yes woman and yes you until you close a transaction that maybe you shouldn't close. We had somebody recently come in and argue with us where, there was a legitimate seller and a fraudulent buyer. We had the parties, both of them, pushing us to close. We sniffed it out. We didn't like it. We said no. We're refusing to close. Basically, the buyer was asking for a $1 million credit from the seller on the closing statement, and we refused to do that. It was like a one plus. It was like a $1 million
How much was
purchase.
the
Something
purchase?
around that same amount. So they basically wanted a credit for the whole entire amount. And the intention between the two parties was that the buyer would refinance, and upon the refinance, they would pay the seller. Basically, what happened was we said no. They kept arguing with us. They ended up going to another closing agent who closed the deal. They ended up closing the deal with a $400,000 credit and a $600,000 escrow holdback, which doesn't make sense because there was no money to hold back because there were no proceeds or no buyer funds. So it was a manipulated settlement statement that ended up turning into an issue. And at the end of the day, like I said, the buyer was supposed to refinance. They did not. The buyer, I'm not sure if they ended up knocking down the house or not, but they ended up just disappearing. They ended up getting a $400,000 credit at closing, so they made money buying a house. The realtors, whoever were involved, made money. And, this was all based on AI generated bank statements that were created by the fake buyer to show proof of funds to enter into this transaction. And then they ended up, seller ended up being screwed at the end of the day. This is something that really happened. It happened a couple months ago. And I really don't know
Wait,
why it even
how does it close? How does it close?
it closed
How did
with
it
a
close?
I don't know how it closed. It closed with a $400,000 seller to buyer credit and a $600,000 post closing escrow, which I don't even understand how that works because there was no funds to escrow.
This
So
is interesting
now
because I got an offer through a realtor. This was a listing that I had. This happened about 2 months ago. I got an amazing offer on one of my listings. And the realtor calls me up 2 days later and says, we have to cancel. I was like, why? She goes, the buyer's not real. They had proof of funds and everything. And they wrote it up under an entity that was actually not it was like an LLC, not an something. It was like different, but like very slightly different from a company that really does buy a lot of properties. And I'm just not understanding what the benefit would be. But you're saying that this still closed, but how? If there's no money how there's no money coming?
there was a untrustworthy closing agent who fell for the trap, closed the deal, ended up issuing the buyer a $400,000 credit at closing, and the buyer disappeared. I have no clue how they closed it. We would not close it, and they ended up fighting us on it and moving to another title company or closing agent that would. So that's what happened, and this is another
Or somebody else
segue
closed it.
into and then
Yeah,
subject
that's
to
crazy.
offers are super prevalent now, where you have buyer investors coming in. This is another form of fraud. That's just reminded me of that. Subject to offers are a buyer investor coming in and saying, "Hi, seller, I'm going to buy your property from you, but we're not going to pay off your loan. I am going to buy your property subject to your loan, meaning it's still there. The seller's credit's still involved. The seller's still responsible to make the payments. The buyer usually buys the property with the promise that they'll pay. What they typically do is they get a tenant in the property immediately. They put a tenant in there. They get passive income from the tenant coming in. They don't pay the mortgage, and then the bank ends up foreclosing on the seller. Now the seller's screwed. Seller has credit issues. The seller has a foreclosure against them, and it's all because they went on a promise from a buyer. And I like to say promise because it's not very much of a promise. And it never happens. The buyer ends up walking away with months of free money and rent, and then the seller is screwed. So, it just, there's various forms of fraud, and that can look like a legitimate offer. These subject to offers have looked like legitimate offers. I see them come across my desk, once every couple of weeks. And I always advise people do not take them because it's just way inherently too dangerous. So
What are
fraud
you
comes in
seeing in the
various,
market right now?
in terms of what?
Because if people are putting these on your desk, what are you seeing in the market right now? If people are putting these crazy offers on your desk, you must be seeing something interesting in this market.
I see the market is moving and it's not slow. People, in some cases there are desperate sellers no matter what kind of market you're in. There's areas that are struggling a little bit more than most. And in those areas where people are, needing to get out, they might be anxious and rush to take a offer because they might not have an offer at the amount they want or anything of that nature. So, when you take a subject to mortgage, you're buying it for way less than the actual purchase price. So these people are making money at the end of the day. It's usually when there's a, very close threshold to the amount of the loan balance that's due and the value of the property. So buyers typically have to come in with very little money, if any, when they do this. So, like I said, it just the market's moving, but it's allowing people to commit fraud at an even higher clip. And with the elderly people here, with the people that want to make a quick buck, there's various reasons why fraud is happening here, but it's super prevalent, and that just I can't emphasize it enough, the importance of associating with a good realtor who will help, determine this fraud from the beginning, the onset of communication, and with a good closing agent. And, with other vendors like lenders and stuff, everybody that will help fish this out and flush out the fraudsters is only a benefit to everybody listening. So, when you have a team dedicated to fight against it rather than just pushing towards the fraud, like in my example, you had the realtors pushing towards closing there when
Of
they
course.
clearly knew that, yeah, of course, there was going to be a commission check on, whatever $1 million deal it was. So it's, you know, it's not good to always chase the quick buck, whether you're a seller, a realtor, whether you're a closing agent, because you need to take the necessary steps. And, one of them, I was just telling you about the legal bulletin that our underwriter sent. One of the points that they have on there is don't rush, because a point of the fraud and a common point that all these fraudsters do is they try to make a muck out of things. They try to create a arena of anxiety and try to put a rush on the thing. So then people get disorganized and disoriented, and they just kind of go with the flow and don't take the proper steps, like double identification confirmation, asking for a passport, maybe even checking with the U.S. embassy of whatever country it is here to make sure that that's a real person. There's so many different ways to verify, and using secure portals to send wire instructions, as much as the email forwarding we talked about earlier, a company not allowing email forwarding like us. There's just so many different ways that you can combat fraud. Video conferencing with clients, verifying the notary. We don't allow clients to use their own notary. We provision the notaries for them with trusted vendors that will put their name on the line for the notary who is, signing the clients. Just a simple thing as a Google search. Our opening team does Google searches. They do obituary searches. They do little things like that. So it's going through multi-level things to double check. And by the time it gets to somebody else, somebody processing the file, they're asking for their ID. They're asking the realtor if they met the person, in person, or it's been a just phone or, whatever, email sometimes. And like I said, we had a contract come on our desk. We opened the file as a seller representation, and right when I looked at the file, I said, "This is fraud." Ended up being fraud, and we caught it right away. It wasn't something that was allowed to go through. So, but that's vacant land. And one thing we also do with vacant land is we send a letter to the last known mailing address of the property owner. And that letter is saying, hey, we received a contract, you're under contract. Do you agree with closing and selling this house? Something as simple as that, which has worked in the past. So it's something so simple to do. Obviously not simple, but simple to take the necessary steps to prevent fraud. It's very easy to avoid all of these steps and very easy to succumb to fraud. And you might have to take 5 steps backwards to take 10 steps forward, but you're protecting yourself. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to protect yourself in this climate, in this market, the way it is, and it's only going to get worse.
Well, with that being said, we have gone through 30 minutes of Making Money with Laura Sanders, and I want to thank you always for being part of it. What is a good number for them to reach out to JK Closing Attorneys if somebody wants to, let's see, you're doing for sale by owner, which very bad idea, right? But let's say you're doing for sale by owner, definitely want to give you a call. Agents, definitely want to give JK Closing Attorneys a call too. They also do a phenomenal Halloween party for all their agents. So, and they have Christmas in July coming up. So, what's a good number to reach out to you?
Phone number 954-779-5000. And you can email me at nick@jkclosings.com or our legal team, legal@jkclosings.com. We're here for any real estate needs. And the point of this conversation today wasn't to scare anybody. It's really just to raise awareness. So when you are moving forward in real estate, you're not doing so haphazardly.
Well, and like always, thank you for listening to Making Money with Laura Sanders. My phone number is 954-650-0827, or you can catch me on the web at lauracell.com. And until next week, thank you for always listening and to watching the streaming of Making Money with Laura Sanders. Make it a great one.
Thank you for tuning in for Making Money with Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. To join the conversation, call us at the studio, 888-994-4995 Studio A, or contact Laura directly at 954-650-0827. Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. We look forward to seeing you